I recently entered the 2025 Pokemon Go Regional Championships in Portland, Oregon. Now, I know what you're thinking. How is Pokemon Go a competitive game, and more importantly, why should I care? Well, Pokemon Go's PvP system is unlike anything else in the franchise. In the mainline video games and the trading card game, players have quite a bit of time to decide what moves to use, what plays to make, and determine the best ways to take down their opponent. Pokemon Go PvP is quite different. The battles are fast paced, where decisions need to be made in a split second. Trying to figure out how to dance around your opponent, outplay them, waste their energy, and above all else, knock out their Pokemon before yours go down is the name of the game. While it might sound simple at first, it can be an extremely difficult but rewarding game. Against the best battlers in the world, all it can take is a single mistake, a single lapse in concentration, or taking half a second too long to react to lose a match. It's this level of precision and game knowledge that makes high-level Pokemon Go PvP so hard to master, yet such a fun experience. Now, going into this regional championship, I knew there would be many of these high-level trainers attending. Former regional champions, former international champions, many veterans of the play Pokemon scene, and of course some of the unknown names that are looking to make history. This regional was the final chance many players would have to qualify for the World Championships being held this August. While I'm normally a player that sticks with the top meta, the tried and true picks, I knew for an event with stakes like this, I would have to try something different to stand above the rest. And there's one Pokemon that I knew that no one would expect. Blastoise. Blastoise has much more bulk than the other water type starters, which gives it the unique role that I'm looking for. The water type starters in Pokemon Go get access to the move Hydro Cannon, one of the best attacks in the game. It's fairly cheap, it does a lot of damage, and pairing it with a good fast move is going to be a recipe for success. Recently, the fast attack rollout was added to the moveset of Blastoise, which gives it quick energy generation as well as rock type coverage, a very underrepresented type in the current meta. Combining this with Skull Bash, a high damage, high energy move that raises Blastoise's already massive defense stat every time you throw it, and I see a Pokemon that has the makings of a champion. That's why it's the first Pokemon I'm going to bring, and the pick that I need to build around for the rest of my team. Shadow Jumpluff is another pick that I have extensive experience using. It is a perfect blend between offense and defense, utilizing high energy generation and heavy hitting moves to swing bad matchups in its favor. It pairs very well with Blastoise taking care of the grass and fighting type Pokemon that can generally do well into my water type Pokemon. This duo will be the cornerstone of the team, and I know my next few Pokemon will need to round out their weaknesses. Diggersby is the next obvious choice for my team. I need a counter to Electric-type Pokemon, as well as something that can do well into Shadow Drapion and Tinkaton. Ground is the perfect coverage against all of those types, and Diggersby's bulk gives it the flexibility that you don't see in many other ground-type picks. It also has the great coverage move of Fire Punch, which allows it to hit back against Grass-type Pokemon for super effective damage. It's a very cheap attack as well, and using Scorching Sands, which has a 30% chance to debuff your opponent's attack every time you throw it, you have a Pokemon that can be a nightmare to take down. Malamar is my next pick that I know I need to bring. Ghost-type Pokemon would be relatively unchecked against my team so far, and fighting types could run away with the game if I only have Jump left to counter them. Malamar's unique Psychic and Dark typing, as well as the fighting type coverage with Superpower, gives it an extremely flexible role on the team, as well as rounding out a few of the bad matchups that we currently have. With 4 Pokemon already locked in, the only top meta Pokemon I know I need a better check for is opposing Shadow Jumpluff. Jumpluff has super effective Fairy type damage into Malamar, it has super effective Flying type damage as well into my own Jumpluff, and it resists my best attacks from Diggersby and my Blastoise as well, so my 5th Pokemon needs to be able to deal with it, and that leads me into Tinkaton. This unique Fairy and Steel-type Pokemon allows Tinkaton not only to shut down Grass-type Pokemon like Jumpluff, but it also has great play into Malamar, Annihilate, Mandibuzz, all picks that I don't really have great coverage into as of yet. While Tinkaton is not as flexible as some of the other picks on my team, its coverage is undeniably exactly what I need. It's a Pokemon that I might not use in every game of the tournament, but it's a Pokemon that I would want to have on my bench, and if I need it, I'm going to be very happy that it's there. This means now we only have one final slot to fill, and I know exactly who I want. Lapras. Lapras is an extremely bulky water-type Pokemon, and it's one of the best ways to shut down opposing Diggersby. I chose to run Ice Beam as its coverage move as well, to give us better play into opposing Jumpluffs, and since I already have Skull Bash coverage on my Blastoise, it was a simple decision to make. It also helps against other grass types that we might see, as with Lapras, Diggersby, and Blastoise, that's 3 shared weaknesses to the grass typing. This team has coverage into almost anything that we might see, and I'm really hoping that the Blastoise pick is going to shine. But before we get into the tournament, let me briefly explain the format of this event. This tournament is held in a double elimination format. Every player starts in the winner's side, where they fight an opponent in a best of 3 set. The player who wins moves on to the next round in the winner's side of the tournament. This continues until only one undefeated player remains in their group. Players who lose on the winner's side end up dropping into the loser's bracket. This loser's bracket is a gauntlet, which nearly doubles the amount of games you need to play to make it as far as a player still on the winner's side. And if you lose in the loser's bracket, your tournament run is over. Suffice it to say, you want to avoid the loser's bracket at all costs. But if you can manage to win enough games in the loser's side, you can still move on to day number 2. Due to the size of this tournament, there will be 4 groups in day number 1, each with 1 player victorious from the winner's side and 1 player victorious from the loser's side. The winner's side players will all be shuffled together and fight it out until only one undefeated player remains. Meanwhile, the loser's bracket will continue eliminating players until there is just 1 player left victorious over the loser's bracket. The winner of the winner's bracket then faces off against the winner of the loser's bracket to decide the champion of the tournament. The player on the winning side only needs to win 1 set against the loser's side player, and as a reward for being undefeated up until this point, the winner's side player needs to be beaten twice in back-to-back sets to lose this tournament. I've locked in my team, the tournament is about to start, so let's see who our first opponent is. My first opponent of the tournament is a player by the name of Rocket Admin J. Now, unfortunately, the first 2 opponents that I faced here at the Portland Regional Championships were both off-stream. This means I don't have footage to show of the matches, but every match from round 3 and beyond will be shown. I ended up taking a 2-1 victory in my first round. Rocket Admin J's team had quite a few alignment-dependent Pokemon on it, such as Alolan Sandslash, Clodsire, Mandibuzz, and Jellicent. But luckily, even though I did drop a game to him, my Malamar was very safe and it was able to clean up most of his line. With this win, I move on to winners round 2, up against a trainer by the name of Young Lost 503. Another trainer I don't know much about, but when I see his team, I almost instantly recognize it. We have 5 of the 6 of the same Pokemon, the only difference being that I have Blastoise and he has Shadow Feraligatr in that slot. My Blastoise looks ridiculously strong here, and my own Lapras has a much better time into his team thanks to Feraligatr not having quite as much play into opposing Lapras that my Blastoise has. I'm able to get a 2-0 victory here, moving me on to winners round 3. While my first 2 opponents may have been people I don't know much about, my round 3 opponent is the exact opposite. OutOfPoket is a player who many consider to be the best battler in North America. He's won many events in the past, and his team building is nearly unmatched. Let's take a look at the matchup. Looking at OutOfPoket's team, I see that we have very similar lineups. The only difference is that instead of having Azumarill on my team, I have Blastoise, and instead of his Shadow Drapion, I have Malamar. Basically, they are the exact same team, so I know what works into my team, I know what works into his team, but he also knows the exact same thing. It's looking like, to me, Tinkaton as well as Blastoise are 2 of my best picks that I can use. There's a lot of options as well where my Lapras could have some play. I could use Pokemon like my Diggersby as well, but it's really going to come down to where I think he is going to place his Pokemon, and if I can use my Blastoise, which is one of my few differences, to my advantage. Blastoise does look pretty free into his lineup. Jumpluff is probably its worst matchup, but I do have Rollout, which is super effective into him, as well as Skull Bash, which can raise my defense. My Lapras is running Ice Beam, whereas his is running Skull Bash, so in that mirror matchup as well, it could be a little bit tricky. Game number 1, I think I'm going to rely on my Tinkaton as well as my Lapras and Blastoise to try to win this game and to try to shut down his Jumpluff if possible. Let's get into the battle and see if it's going to work out. Game number 1 against OutOfPoket, and we are met by one of the best lead matchups that we could see. Tinkaton into Shadow Jumpluff is exactly where I want this Pokemon to be. Tinkaton resists everything that this Jumpluff is going to throw, and not only that, but Pocket is staying in here. That makes me think there's something in the backline that also might not want to see my Tinkaton potentially a Pokemon like his Shadow Drapion. In comes a play rough, it will end up putting them down a little bit below half HP at this point. Pocket does have a lot of energy. He banks it all, swaps into his own Tinkaton. At this point, I'm going to bring in my Blastoise, go for the Hydro Cannons here against him, and just try to whittle down this Pokemon as much as we can. In comes a play rough from the Tinkaton. I know I can tank 1 pretty easily here, get to 2 Hydro Cannons as well before he reaches that second attack, and because I'm able to reach these 2 moves, this Tinkaton's not going to be all that healthy by the time I'm able to reach 2 Hydro Cannons. In comes Hydro Cannon number 1. Our opponent is just 1 Fairy Wind away from that next play rough, which means they have it right now. I need to go for 1 Hydro Cannon after the other if I want to get these off before getting sniped down. Hydro Cannon comes through. It's not quite enough damage here to 2-shot this Pokemon, but the second one will put him pretty low. In comes the Hydro Cannon, and it looks like a no shield from OutOfPoket. He will survive this move just barely, and he can throw a Play Rough if he wants to knock us out here, but I'm thinking he did stay in that lead matchup. I don't necessarily need switch advantage against that Shadow Jumpluff with Lapras and Tinkaton, and especially if it's going to be a Pokemon like that Drapion in the backline, then I can just let my Blastoise go down, farm down with my Fairy Winds here, and have a lot of energy on Tinkaton to potentially use against whatever he might have in the back. In comes a Bulldoze. This will do a sizable amount of damage here into our Tinkaton, but because it's not the best move in the game, we can tank it pretty easily, farm down, and come out with nearly 100 energy. Our opponent at this point has a decision to make. Who do they come in with? And unfortunately for us, this is exactly what we did not want to see. It's a Diggersby in the backline, a Pokemon that my Lapras would have a lot of play into. If I kept Switch Advantage, this game would have been very much in my favor. But at this point, he has Switch Advantage in his favor. Not only that, but he banked so much energy on his Shadow Jumpluff. That means an Acrobatics is going to be thrown. I have to shield if I want to keep my Lapras healthy enough to deal with not only this Jumpluff, but also that Diggersby in the backline. This is where having Psywave as my fast move is very unfortunate. I'm not able to farm down this Jumpluff anywhere near as quickly as I would like. If I had an Ice-type fast move, then this Jumpluff would be toast, as well as that Diggersby. But because these acrobatics are so spammy and he has so much energy, my Ice-type Pokemon here is in a tricky spot. In comes a Sparkling Aria. This might be enough damage here to knock him out, despite the fact that it's resisted, saying Psywave has put him pretty low. In comes a Shield from OutOfPoket, and at this point, though, unfortunately, he is almost at the next acrobatics. In comes a move. This will chunk down my Lapras quite a bit, but we have nearly knocked out this Jumpluff. I think my one win condition this game is farming him all the way down with Psywaves. That is about the only play that I can see here to have any chance to win this game. In comes the next move here from Pocket, though. He goes for the Aerial Ace. I do not get a catch. I don't get the Psywave down either. This is going to not nearly knock us out, but it will put us so low that that Diggersby in the backline is going to be nearly insurmountable. In comes the Fairy Wind down, and our Tinkaton tries to go for the farm down, but that Diggersby comes right back in. It has a shield. It's way too healthy. I don't think that there's almost anything that we can do. Play Rough comes through. He confidently no shields at this point. He wants to save shields for my Lapras, so it's almost at 2 moves in the backline. In comes the Scorching Sands to knock out our Tinkaton, and even if somehow we can reach 2 moves against this Diggersby, the Quick Attack and Fairy Wind damage is likely going to be too much for me to overcome. Scorching Sands knocks out my Tinkaton. My Lapras comes back in here. We have nearly back-to-back moves, but that Quick Attack is likely going to seal the deal. I think at this point, Lapras will go down. Quick Attack will take us out, and unfortunately, barely losing the game here in game number 1. Yikes. That's not exactly how I wanted my first game on stream to go. While that match was pretty close, it was a little bit frustrating that in the end, I would have won that game based on switch advantage if I would have just shielded my Blastoise and committed to winning alignment. With that said, the game plan did work out. My Tinkaton was in the right spot. It did line up into that Jumpluff, and my Blastoise as well as my Lapras did try to put in a lot of work. The only issue is that I did not trust my Pokemon to do what I brought them to do. I think going into game number 2 here, one of the best adjustments that I can make is maybe drop a Pokemon that's as polarizing as that Tinkaton, instead maybe using a Pokemon like my own Jumpluff, and still rely on my 2 water types in the back. Let's see if this adjustment is going to pay off. Here in game number 2 against OutOfPoket, we see my Shadow Jumpluff up against his Lapras. While I am a Flying and Grass-type Pokemon, he actually has no Ice-type damage on this Lapras, so it's a very neutral matchup here through and through. He makes a nice catch on his Diggersby, but I know at this point Acrobatics is still going to do a massive amount of damage. I can build back up here, have some energy loaded, and then swap into my own Lapras to try to counteract this Water-type Pokemon. In comes a couple more Fairy Winds. We bank an Acrobatics here before swapping into our own Lapras, and I think at this point we are in a pretty good position. He does have a lot of energy left over on his own Lapras, but these Scorching Sands will not be able to two-shot us here. We can take 2 moves pretty easily and then go for a Sparkling Aria to either draw a shield or knock out this Diggersby, depending on how Pocket wants to play this game out. In comes the next move here from Pocket. I'm still going to overfarm, knowing he cannot swap out just yet. I want to have energy just in case he brings in a third Pokemon this game. In comes a Scorching Sands. This move will end up coming through and puts us deep into the red, but we can survive, and the quick attacks are not quite enough here to threaten our HP. We're at back-to-back Sparkling Aria. We're going to throw 1. If he shields this move, it's likely so he can swap out here, bank this energy, and come in with his own Lapras once again. He knows I don't have access to that move of Skull Bash, so if his Lapras does come back in here, my energy is generally going to be wasted. I do have to throw this move, though. My Switch Clock is not quite back up yet. This will realign our Switch Clock here, so I can swap out, but the Sparkling Aria going to do very pitiful damage against the opposing Lapras. In comes our Acrobatics here. Pocket tries to reach for the Skull Bash, but not quite before this Acrobatics will end up either landing or drawing a shield. We see the shield here from OutOfPoket, so he has gone down 2 shields to 0 so far in this game. I think that I could invest in our Shadow Jumpluff here. Acrobatics is still going to do a lot of damage, and while Skull Bash will end up raising his defense stat, I know we're still going to be able to do quite a bit of damage with the next charge attack. That Skull Bash would have basically knocked us out as well. While it's not super effective, Skull Bash is one of the most powerful moves in the entire game. Acrobatics being thrown at a +1 defense Lapras, likely not enough damage here to knock him out. In comes a move down, goes the Lapras deep into the red, but he can survive and just barely outpace us here to the next Skull Bash. I can shield my Jumpluff if I want to here, but I think at this point, letting it go down and investing in our Blastoise is going to be the best play to make. In comes our Blastoise. We're going to get a rollout energy lead. In comes that Shadow Jumpluff, which is taking super effective damage from our rollout. We have Skull Bash as well on our own Blastoise, but this matchup can be a little bit tricky. Pocket is going to go for the Aerial Ace bait. I think at this point that he will bait us, so I'm going to call that this is not the heavier hitting move. We no-shield the Aerial Ace, which is the proper play to make, and now Skull Bash will be thrown. This will raise my defense stat as well as doing a massive amount of damage into this Shadow Jumpluff, but it's not going to quite one-shot him. At this point, I will likely still need a full charge move to knock him out. In comes that Skull Bash. Down goes a lot of HP on that Jumpluff, but yeah, they are still in range where potentially I need a Hydro Cannon to KO this Pokemon. He goes for yet another Air Release. I am forced into shielding something in this matchup, or else I might just get completely farmed down. In comes the Charge Attack. In comes our next Hydro Cannon here in just a second. We're able to try to go for a catch here. Not quite able to get it, but we still force energy out of pocket. He is going to be in a range where one rollout might be enough to knock him out here, but he might also be able to reach an Air Release, and if that is the case, this is going to be such a tricky endgame. In comes our Blastoise once again. We're going to go here for the rollout and then potentially the Hydro Cannon, but he reaches a Fire Punch at the very last second. This move will put us deep into the red, but I know we will survive it, and potentially we can still roll out down that Lapras and reach a Hydro Cannon against the Jumpluff. In comes the Hydro Cannon. This will knock out this Digger's Beam. Will we be able to make the right call? I need to make sure that we can knock out that Jumpluff with the charge move, and if that Lapras does come back in here, go for the rollout instead. We're able to farm him all the way down, come out of this with a Hydro Cannon, and we can go for the Hydro up against this Shadow Jumpluff, taking the win in game number 2. This means the set is now evened up 1-1. The winner of this next set will be able to take the entire series and move on in the winner's side of the bracket. Well, there we go. Now we've tied up the series 1-1. Now my team has kind of had some momentum. We see that Blastoise is a very solid pick into his team. While that endgame was a very tight scenario, Blastoise was able to wiggle its way through it, and Shadow Jumpluff, as well as my Lapras, was able to put in quite a bit of work. With that said, going into game number 3, I don't think I can quite disrespect Shadow Drapion as much as I just did. I didn't have a single counter to it on my team, so I think Diggersby could be a Pokemon to try to bring in. This might also cover for in case he wants to bring a Pokemon like his own Tinkaton. Diggersby would be very good there, but my 2 water types, they've been putting in a lot of work. I don't see any reason to drop them at this point. Let's get into game number 3 and see who will come out on top. Game number 3 against OutOfPoket, and we have the Diggersby Mirror match. Now, this is going to be a very neutral matchup here if I want to stay in, but I do have 2 Water-type Pokemon in the backline that are actually way better into Diggersby here. I think maybe banking this energy just in case he has a Pokemon like that Shadow Drapion in the back, and trying to bait out a pick with my Blastoise is once again going to be the way to go. Scorching Sands comes through. It gets the debuff against us here, but we were able to swap out, meaning that debuff is going to be meaningless into our Diggersby. Pocket is staying in for just a second, going for a Scorching Sands into our Blastoise. Once again, he might get a debuff here, but either way, Blastoise does have quite a bit of energy. Scorching Sands going to be thrown. We no-shield the attack, and in comes yet another debuff. This is not what I want to see here. Pocket is being so patient at this point. I'm going to keep on farming. I think he's going to try to go for a catch on a Hydro Cannon, which is exactly what ends up happening. Instead, I go for the Skull Bash. I'm going to be able to do quite a bit of neutral damage into this Pokemon, and potentially draw a shield. Looks like he does let that move go. My attack has been debuffed here, so that Skull Bash not doing quite as much damage as I would have liked it to do. We are almost at the next Skull Bash, but he does reach that Sparkling Aria. I think with our defense increase on that Skull Bash, I will be able to survive this move, just barely reaching that Skull Bash. In comes the move. Blastoise does survive here on 1 HP. We're able to reach the Skull Bash, and while we are debuffed, so this move will not knock out, it will still put him deep into the red, easily into farm down range for either my Lapras or my Diggersby. In comes our Lapras here. We're able to Psywave down. Pocket might just barely be able to reach the Sparkling Aria. He is going to reach the move right before I farm down, but at this point, it's not going to do that much damage to us. We're able to still get a huge energy lead. It's going to come down to his final Pokemon to see what we can do in this game. We still have a lot of energy on our Diggersby. In comes the Shadow Drapion from OutOfPoket, and because we have this energy lead here, this is not that bad of a matchup. We're going to go for Sparkling Aria to try to get as much damage into him as we can, and in comes either a shield or potentially a lot of damage. He no-shields the Sparkling Aria, which means at this point, potentially, this might be Psywave downrange. If I can go for the full farm down here, then we might have energy for that Diggersby in the backline, which I think will have a good chance of winning us this game. In comes a shield from this next Sparkling Aria. If we can Psywave down, which is going to be so close, saying they do resist Psychic-type damage, then we should be able to win this match. But if he is able to get to another Crunch after this, as well as a third Crunch to follow up and actually do damage to our Lapras, this could be a tricky endgame. Crunch being thrown once again here. Our opponent is trying his very best to knock out our Lapras before Diggersby comes back in. This move is going to potentially get a debuff against us as well. Crunch comes through, no defense drop there, love to see it. Is the Psywave damage enough to knock him out here? We are able to just barely Psywave all the way down. Diggersby is going to have to throw energy to knock us out. In comes the Sparkling Aria, and in comes the final shield from OutOfPoket. This is still going to be a little bit of a tricky endgame because I know he has energy on this Diggersby. My Diggersby is just a little bit lower on HP than his as well because we have taken a Scorching Sands in this game. With that said, we have a full charge attack loaded on our own Diggersby, but I am worried about debuffs once again. That could be a factor to make it so we might lose this game. Scorching Sand's going to be thrown. If I get a debuff here, I will instantly win this game. If I don't get a debuff and then he gets a debuff on the next Scorching Sands, there is a chance this can get a little bit tricky. Scorching comes through. It's able to put him deep into the yellow. We don't get a debuff here. Pocket is able to reach the next move at the same exact time. I lose CMP, which means if he can get a debuff, this is his last chance before I'm able to throw my move. In comes the Scorching Sands here. Will we get debuffed a third time in this game? We end up getting that third debuff, which makes my life so much more tricky. I don't think this is going to put him into a farm down range at this point. Scorching Sands comes through. Is this enough to put him to Fire Punch range at the very least? It will be very close at this point. He needs a full on Scorching Sands to knock us out. We only need to land this Fire Punch to have any chance to win this. We've reached the move. Is this going to be enough to knock out the Diggersby? If so, we have won game 3. If not, it might be very close in the end game. Fire Punch knocks out the Diggersby, and we take the game. And with this Game 3 win, we just barely overcome OutOfPoket and move on in the winner's side of the bracket. What a tricky game. A lot of debuffs to be had there, a lot of luck that we had to fight against, but because my team was so flexible, because I relied on my Blastoise as well as my Lapras, and I knew what I was doing with these Pokemon, I was able to just barely come out on top. And with this win, we have moved on in the winner's side of the bracket. We're able to make it into the Group A winners finals, which guarantees me a top 16 placement at this tournament. If I can win this next game, we make it into the top 8. Let's see who we're going to face off against. My next opponent is revealed, and I do not like who I see. Cobikuplent is my next round opponent, and the reason that I don't like seeing this is because he has always made it into the top 8 of the Portland Regional Championships. Because of his record at this tournament in the past, I know this is going to be a very tricky matchup. Let's see what his team is, and let's see if we can overcome one of the most consistent battlers at the Portland Regional Championships. Looking at Kobe's team, I actually have a bit of a breath of fresh air. I see that my Blastoise is nearly unchecked by his entire lineup. His Malamar is basically his only Pokemon that I would even consider a positive matchup into my Blastoise, and even there, just a little bit of energy is all it takes to flip it in my favor. I have super effective Hydro Cannon for Clodsire, for Diggersby. I have Rollout, which hits super effective for Golisopod, as well as Shadow Jump Off and Lapras. This looks like a fantastic matchup for Blastoise, and if I can leverage it properly, I am going to hope that I can make it on here in the winner's bracket and make it into the top 8 of the tournament. Blastoise, as well as potentially my own Malamar, look like a very strong duo, and just like against OutOfPoket, using both of my water types will likely lead to success. Let's get into the first match and see how it goes. Game number 1 against Cobikuplent, and we have Malamar into the Bug-type Pokemon Golisopod. Not exactly the best seed matchup, but only if he lands an X-Scissor can he one-shot us here, so I'm going to build up some energy, swap into our Blastoise, and at this point start loading up on as much energy as I can. These super effective rollouts are adding up quite a bit against Golisopod. I know I can survive one X-Scissor here, but he is going to be able to chip us down quite a bit. In comes the Bug-type Charge Move. We do survive the first one. He's close to the second one. He does throw it instantly, and at this point, I think I'm going to be fine investing a shield into our Blastoise. We've done quite a bit of damage here to this Golisopod, and I also know at this point, Malamar can easily finish this off later on in the game if I need to, and Malamar is really only worried about this Golisopod, so once that Pokemon is out of the way, we should be in a very good spot. And not to mention, he just swapped in a Ground-type Pokemon into our Blastoise. He doesn't have a great answer on his team here to the Water-type damage, but I am surprised to see this Pokemon of all things come in. Hydro Cannon number 2 going to be thrown. This won't knock him out because Diggersby is pretty bulky and our Rock-type Fast Food Pressure is resisted by this Diggersby, but it does put him deep into the red and our Switch Clock is coming back up. I don't want to let Blastoise go down just yet. We swap out into our Lapras and we take the Scorching Sands here. While this move will do about 30% of our HP, I know we will survive it. He might get a debuff against us. I'm hoping that Pocket used all of the debuff luck though in this tournament. He does end up not debuffing us here. We Psywave all the way down and we will see what he ends up bringing in. It seems like he was a little bit scared of our water-type damage. He actually brings in Golisopod once again, which makes me think it's almost certainly going to be a Clodsire in the backline. Sparkling Aria will be thrown into the Golisopod. They are in range where that would be enough to knock him out, and because he shields this move, that even further reinforces my idea that it likely is going to be that Clodsire as the final Pokemon. If that is the case, we have so much damage against that in our whole team. We have Psywave, Ice Beam, and Sparkling Aria all super effective against it with our Lapras. Not only that, but we have Hydro Cannons with Blastoise, we have Psywave with Malamar, and it is that Clodsire. This is the best possible Pokemon that we could see here. We're already at 1 Sparkling Aria, and we know there's no way this Pokemon can fast move us down, even from how low our Lapras is quite yet. We can likely go for a shield here on the next charge attack from him, reach an Ice Beam, and then do a massive amount of damage into this Pokemon. Sludge Bomb will be thrown here. I could let this go if I wanted to rely on my backline, but I know that Ice Beam will do a massive amount of damage into this Clodsire. I can shield this up, go for the charge attack here, and guarantee that Clodsire doesn't have too much play in the backline. Ice Beam being thrown, down goes quite a bit of HP from this Clodsire. I don't know quite how much this is going to do. It's not going to one-shot from this range, but it does put him deep into the yellow, nearly into the red. Foul Play will be enough to knock him out, but I want to keep energy just in case he swaps out into that Golisopod. We know at this point we don't get one-shot by a Sludge Bomb, but an X-Scissor could potentially knock us out, so saving energy for when that Pokemon comes back in and sniping them down instantly is going to be the play. Golisopod does come back in here. Foul Play already loaded. This will knock out the Golisopod, and at this point, Malamar should also be able to knock out that Clodsire. Foul play knocks out Goliath's spot here. Clodsire comes back in, but we are so close to the next foul play, we're able to reach it, which should knock out this Clodsire, and it's looking like here in game number 1, we will be taking the win. Blastoise put in a lot of work, Malamar able to close it out. The plan worked to perfection. Blastoise Up Energy was a Pokemon that he had almost no play into. Hydro Cannon was a very powerful move into those Ground-type Pokemon, Lapras and Malamar as well, just completely dismantling the Clodsire, and it's a Pokemon that I don't expect to see him bring in the next game. I feel because Clodsire is going to be very hard to bring for Kobe at this point, my own Shadow Jump Off becomes very free, so using my Shadow Jump Off as well as my 2 Water types against him in the next match should in theory lead to success. Let's get into the next game and see if we can close out this series 2-0. Game number 2 against Kobe, and we see the Diggersby into our Shadow Jumpluff. This is a very neutral lead matchup. While I am a Grass type into a Ground type, we have to keep in mind I don't actually have any Grass type damage, and he has super effective Fire Punch into us. This Fire Punch will come through. Jumpluff is fairly bulky, so he can't two-shot us here, but the quick attacks will start adding up, and I have 2 Water types in the backline. I don't really want to waste all of my Shadow Jumpluff here. I want to bank up energy, come in with Blastoise, and start to make his life a little bit uncomfortable. He goes for the chip and dip play with this Scorching Sands. This move will be enough here to put us down to about half HP, but as long as we do avoid a debuff, this is still a very good spot to be in. Scorching Sands comes through, it puts us down nearly into the yellow, and we bait out the Shadow Jumpluff. Now this Pokemon is not that bad for Blastoise to see. I have Rollout, which is super effective, as well as Skull Bash, which is going to end up landing into the Shadow Jumpluff. This move will put him down deep into the yellow, raise my defense stat, and make it so now Blastoise only needs to go for straight Hydro Cannons to win this matchup. Acrobatics being thrown, he knows at this point he absolutely has to go for Acrobatics to knock us out thanks to our defense boost. I'm going to shield this up. I know we can make this a bit uncomfortable for the Jumpluff, shielding up this move, going for more super effective Rock-type damage, and then throwing Hydro Cannon, which I would be surprised if he wants to shield. Jumpluff does resist the Water-type damage, but how scared is he of this Blastoise? He lets it go, and at this point, it is going to knock out the Shadow Jumpluff, which means Blastoise is going to have a defense boost. It has a lot of energy left over, and our Shadow Jumpluff as well still has energy on it. In comes that Diggersby. Once again, we are able to reach the Hydro Cannon here, which will do a sizable amount of damage into this Diggersby if they let it go. They do shield the attack, which is a good play. Hydro would have put him deep into the yellow, potentially into range, where just an Acrobatics from our Jumpluff would be enough to knock him out. We're almost at the next move, but Kobe makes a smart play of throwing a move, but he might have misclicked here. He went for the Fire Punch rather than the Scorching Sands. I don't need to shield this move up. I can no shield still get to the Hydro Cannon, which is going to end up landing, unfortunately, into the Lapras. A nice catch by him, but at this point, I know his full team. I know he is not on Ice Beam on this Pokemon. All I need to do is line up my Lapras into that Diggersby, use all the energy on my Shadow Jumpluff into this Lapras, and we should be able to win this game. In comes the Acrobatics. We're going to see an instant shield from Kobe. He knows at this point his only chance to win this game is by boosting his defense with his Skull Bash and hopefully taking out my Shadow Jumpluff. But the thing is, I have so much energy still left over on our Shadow Jumpluff. We reach the Acrobatics, which while this will not one-shot, will put him into Fast Move Farm Down range or potentially range where we can go for an Air Release to knock him out. Acrobatics does end up landing, and at this point, this game is definitely over for Kobe. He's going to be forced into throwing energy against us here. I can no-shield this move, Farm Down with Psywaves. Skull Bash is going to be a ton of energy down the drain for Kobe at this point, and that Diggersby is not all that healthy. We can farm this down, get a huge energy lead, and we still have a shield to our name with our Lapras. In comes a move potentially from this Lapras. They do barely reach a Sparkling Aria, but I know I do not need to shield this move. That was not a Skull Bash, and a Scorching Sands from that Diggersby would do quite a bit more damage. Sparkling ends up landing, putting us to about 75% HP, but that Diggersby does come back in. While they will not get knocked out by a single charge attack, I know we can reach a second one here extremely easily. Lapras will be able to take us the win here in this game. In comes that first one here, unfortunately not quite enough to put them into Sidewave downrange, so we will need to throw that second move, but even if this next attack ends up landing, which it will not thanks to our shield, it would not be enough to knock out. Scorching Sands comes through. Even a debuff would not save Kobe from this point. He does get that debuff here, which I guess will prove whether or not the Sparkling Aria will still be enough to knock out. This matchup was so tricky for Kobe, but we were able to dance around with Lapras and Blastoise to take the win here in this game. Thanks to Blastoise being such a free pick into Kobe's team, we are able to pick up a 2-0 sweep against him and move on into the top 8 of the bracket. Because Kobe was the last undefeated player in Group A, we now move on into the final stage. Once the other 3 groups finish up and we see who the other 3 undefeated players are in the tournament, we will know who my next potential opponent will be. As well as this, there are still going to be 4 players on the loser side of the bracket that can still potentially make it into the top 8. I will await my opponent here on the winner's side, and I'll try to stay there as long as I can. When the group stage finished up, I looked at the bracket and I saw who my next round opponent would be. Ashtonash was my next opponent here in the winner's side, and I knew this player would not be one to take lightly. Ashtonash, while he never has won a regional or any international title himself, he has come so close so many different times. Because of this, I know he's hungry for the win, and once again, he finds himself in a position where he could win this whole tournament. Let's see what his team is, and let's see if we can take him down. Looking at Ashtonash's team, and it's unlike anything else that we've seen up until this point. He has a Cradilly, a Pokemon that's good into my water types, into my ground type Pokemon, as well as having rock type coverage for my Shadow Jumpluff. He also has a Corviknight and a Claydol, two other core breakers, which could be a little bit tricky to dance around if I'm not careful. I also know that Ashtonash is a fantastic battler. He's not going to give me any wiggle room here, so if I want any chance to win this game, I need to make sure that I make the right calls, and I need to make sure I bring the right Pokemon. Diggersby does look at least somewhat playable here. I would expect a lot of Shadow Drapion. I might expect some Corviknight too from him, and if I bring my Diggersby, I need to prepare it for that Cradilly, so Pokemon such as my Shadow Jumpluff, which still has play into it despite the Rock-type damage it would take, as well as potentially my Malamar, which as long as it avoids the Azumarill should be in a good spot. I think those three Pokemon will be my ticket to success. Let's get into the first game and see if the plan pays off. Game 1 against Ashtonash, and we see Shadow Drapion into our Diggersby. This is exactly the Pokemon that I wanted to see here. I know that Shadow Jumpluff as well as our Malamar in the backline do not want to see this Pokemon by any means. Aqua Tail going to come through from Ashtonash. The one good thing about Shadow Drapion is it has great coverage against its one weakness of the Ground-type Pokemon. Aqua Tail not quite enough to two-shot us here. We go for a very bold Fire Punch bait, but I know he is almost certainly going to shield, saying if he doesn't, that is his entire Shadow Drapion down the drain. Fire Punch gets that shield, and we're going to try our best here to once again go for a Scorching Sands, but I think my opponent knows at this point he will not be able to reach 3 Aqua Tails before my next Scorching Sands thanks to that bait. We might see a catch opportunity here from Ashtonash. Aqua Tail coming through, our opponent is not quite able to knock us out. He goes for the catch attempt, we wait, we see it coming, and now Malamar is going to respond into this Cradilly. We should be able to win this matchup here pretty easily, going for Superpower as well as the Psywave damage. Rock Tomb is well known for debuffing attack stats, and while this move will make it so I'll do less damage, we still have access to Superpower, which is super effective, and we should still be able to win this individual matchup against this Cradilly. With that said, we don't know what's in the back line. We're at back-to-back superpowers right now, too, which means, while I will potentially neutralize most of this Cradilly, they are going to debuff us so much at this point. I'll be at -2 defense, -3 attack. In comes that first superpower. In comes the second one. We're able to win CMP against the Cradilly. This will knock them out because of the no-shield on Ashtonash's side, but potentially what he has in the back could be a little bit tricky depending on what farms us down. In comes the Azumarill. I'm not able to swap out just yet. I wish I could because all of this energy going into this Azumarill is going to make my life very tricky. I'm going to go for the superpower here to lower my defense even more. I want to make sure at this point that we take less bubble farm down from our opponent to make it so he gets less energy on this Azumarill. Superpower will do a very pitiful amount of damage. Psywave doing very little at this point. I'm at -4 attack, and he gets a complete farm down with this Azumarill. We do have a Grass-type Pokemon in the backline, but this Pokemon does not want to end up taking Ice Beams here from this Azumarill. We can survive one move despite being a Grass and Flying-type Pokemon, but it will still do quite a bit of damage to us if we end up taking one here in the end. And it seems like we might end up taking one. Acrobatics is not going to be able to one-shot him from this range. In comes the next Ice Beam here. I know I have to shield this up. This is the move that's going to do the most amount of damage left in this match. Ice Beam going to come through. Thanks to our shield here, we're not going to get one shot quite yet, but he brings back in that Shadow Drapion here. We go for the Acrobatics, but he CMP ties us with this Aqua Tail to get any little bit of damage that he can with this Pokemon. Aqua Tail coming through. Down goes a decent amount of HP from our Jumpluff. That might put us into range where that Ice Beam from that Azumarill will be enough to knock us out. It's going to be a tricky endgame matchup here. Let's see what he's going to do. He no-shields the Acrobatics. It knocks out his Shadow Drapion. But at this point, I think there's only one chance for me to win this game, and that's going to be with a Scorching Sands debuff. I'm going to try our best here to either go for a catch or go for the Scorching Sands debuff. We go for the catch here, doesn't quite work out, but we have the Scorching Sands ready to go. 30% chance to make it, so I survive the Ice Beam here from Ashtonash. He no-shields this attack, knowing that Acrobatics would do quite a bit more damage. In comes a move, down goes a lot of HP from this Azumarill, and there is the 30% debuff in our favor. We've had a few debuffs that are a bit unfortunate for us in this tournament. First time that we had one here work for us. I think this debuff is going to make it so Jumpluff will just barely be able to survive this attack. In comes the Ice Beam. This move will do a lot of damage. Will Jumpluff survive? It's going to do 25% less damage than normal Ice Beam being thrown. We do survive the attack here. One more Fairy Wind off of the Acrobatics to guarantee the knockout. Azumarill will end up getting knocked out. I don't love winning with a chance debuff there, but sometimes you got to take those kinds of wins when you get them, and we take the win against Ashtonash. Well, alright, we had to rely on a little bit of luck to win that game, but I mean, a 30% chance isn't that unlikely. With that said, it wasn't the most confident win of my life, and I'm hoping in game number 2 we're able to clean up our gameplay just a little bit more. Diggersby was able to catch a pretty good lead there in that game. Malamar as well against the Cradilly was exactly where I wanted to see it. Shadow Jumpluff seems like it's a pretty neutral Pokemon still against his team, so I think using the same 3 Pokemon in the same order could be a path to success. His team's pretty tricky for me to deal with here, so I think just trying to run what I know works will be a way to win. Let's see if it's going to work out. Game number 2 against Ashtonash in a much worse lead than in game number 1. Diggersby doesn't want to see the Grass-type Pokemon here. Our Shadow Jumpluff in the backline as well is not great into the Rock Tomb user that we see on our screen right now, which means that we are going to have to stay in this lead, go for a chip with our Scorching Sands, maybe try to catch a Grass Knot at some point on our Shadow Jumpluff. If we can do that, maybe we have some play in this game, but if we can't do that, then I don't know exactly what we can do. Scorching Sands ends up landing here into the Cradilly. No debuff. We used up all of our luck in that last game. Grass Knot going to do a massive amount of damage into our Diggersby. In comes the Grass Knot, down goes about 60% of our HP, but we're going to swap into our Malamar now and try our best to dance around this Pokemon. In comes a Rock Tomb against our Malamar. I know this move will not one-shot us here, but what he is doing is he is going to make sure my Malamar is going to do as little damage as possible. Rock Tomb will always lower my attack stat here by 25%, meaning now Malamar is not going to do anywhere near as much damage to the Shadow Drapion when it comes back in. With that said, Ashtonash goes only for an Aqua Tail here. I think we can survive this attack. There's a chance we can reach 2 superpowers against this Pokemon, and if that is the case, then at the very least, our debuffed Malamar will still put in quite a bit of work. In comes superpower number 1. This move is going to be single stage debuffed. It's not going to do that much damage to him, but it still will put him into the yellow. The next move will be at -2, which will do even less damage here, and we'll see if we get a shield here from Ashtonash. In comes the charge attack. Our opponent is going to opt to let this move get shielded, actually. At the last second, he chooses to shield the attack. Diggersby going to try to come back in here to neutralize his Pokemon, but he is already at an Aqua Tail. At this point, we've seen a Drapion and a Cradilly. I'm hoping there's no Corviknight in the backline. Anything other than Corviknight would be very playable for our Shadow Jumpluff. We're going to swap out here and try our best to neutralize this Pokemon. Jumpluff going to come in, and a Crunch will be reached right before my Aerial Ace, which is a little bit tricky to deal with. I have to shield something at this point. I'm going to shield this up and hope for no defense drop on my Jumpluff. Crunch comes through. Our Jumpluff does shield it up here, but a defense drop is going to end up happening, meaning now we take a lot more fast and pressure from these Poison Stings, and the next Crunch will hurt quite a bit more. In comes the Aerial Ace to knock out this Shadow Drapion. Down goes the Poison-type Pokemon. What does he have in the back? But he has the Corviknight, a Pokemon that we have next to no play into. Our Fairy and Flying-type damage is going to be very much resisted by the Steel and Flying-type Pokemon. Not only that, at this point we're in range where a single Sky Attack will easily knock us out. Acrobatics tries to do its best here, but it's not even enough to two-shot. Corviknight is fairly bulky. Acrobatics, while it is a good move, is not quite enough to overcome this matchup. Sky Attack coming through, it will end up drawing our final shield of the game. My only remote chance of winning is maybe getting a catch on our Diggersby. If we can catch a Sky Attack here, then we might be able to make something happen. We go for an Aerial Ace bait. Our opponent might end up shielding. Maybe they won't. They let them move through, and at this point, I think this is going to be game over no matter what happens. I still am going to attempt to catch here in just a second. Our opponent does not fall for it. They go for the full farm down. In fact, they actually come in with their Cradilly here, meaning now they have energy on Cradilly, they have energy on Corviknight, and I don't think there's any way I can take out both these Pokemon, especially saying there is still a shield remaining on his side. Rock Tomb will come through against her Shadow Jumpluff, and it looks like here Ashtonash will secure the win in game number 2. Ashtonash made the perfect adjustment into my team. Having that Cradilly in the lead was one of the trickiest things that I could have dealt with, and because he was also able to have that Corviknight in the backline, Shadow Jumpluff felt like it had almost no play. With that said, I feel like the 3 Pokemon that I'm bringing are still the 3 best that I can bring into him. It's just a matter of time before he's going to be weak once again to Diggersby in the lead, should I run it back a 3rd time. This is where the mind games start to really get tricky. Does he expect me to run it back? Does he think at this point that I'm going to shake things up? I think it's in my best interest here to just run back the team that I think is still my best option to win. Diggersby, as long as it catches a decent lead, should be able to put in enough effort that we can win the game. Let's get into the battle and see if we can pick up a win in game number 3. Game number 3 against Ashtonash, we see Corviknight finally in the lead up against our Diggersby. Not only that, but Ashtonash is staying in this lead scenario, which makes me think the Shadow Drapion might be in the backline. Diggersby could be the perfect core breaker against him in this game. Fire Punch coming through. This move is not going to be enough to two-shot the Corviknight since it's such a bulky Pokemon, and since we do have Quick Attack as our fast move pressure, but we're still able to chip down this Pokemon quite a bit and make it a lot less tricky for our backline to deal with. In comes a Sky Attack. I know I survived 2 of these pretty comfortably. Corviknight does not have a lot of fast move pressure into Diggersby using Sand Attack as their fast move, and we take that move very comfortably. We can go for a Fire Punch here, but I feel like a catch is going to be coming in just a second, so we overfarm and we see the Cradilly come back in once again. but this is exactly where I want to see it. Malamar, as we've seen throughout this series, is my best counter to this Pokemon that we can really bring into his team. In comes a Rock Tomb against us here. This move will end up debuffing my attack stat, but I think at this point, that is a risk I'm willing to take. We can go for a lot of Sidewave damage as well as Superpower here in just a second. Superpower will be at -1 attack, which will not one-shot him here, but because I'm still able to be super effective into him, it will chip down this Cradily quite a bit, and I think we're still in a fantastic spot in this game. In comes that superpower. We see the no shield by Ashtonash into the Rock Tomb immediately thrown afterwards. This will draw a shield from us if we want to survive, but I think that shielding this up, going for an overfarm here, and building up as much energy as we can right before the next Rock Tomb will be the way to win this game. I think at this point it's almost certainly going to be that Drapion in the backline. If that is the case, then our Diggersby should be able to swap instantly back in once this Cradily goes down, clear all the debuffs that my Malamar has, save this energy as well for the backline. Let's see what he ends up doing here. We do see that Drapion come in. I go for the Fire Punch, anticipating the catch attempt by Ashtonash. I go for the Fire Punch into the Corviknight, and he thinks at this point maybe he got a catch off here, but Fire Punch will end up landing into the Corviknight, which will nearly knock him out. In comes the next Sky Attack. I get another, or in fact, he goes for an Iron Head here, trying to bait a shield from us, but I know I survive this attack pretty easily one way or another. I am at another move. I want to overfarm here as much as I can to have energy for that Drapion. Fire Punch will be thrown here, and this move will knock out the Corviknight. We know there is still that Drapion in the backline. We have a Jumpluff, which is going to be weak to that Poison-type damage in the back, but we have a Superpower. We have a lot of energy as well on our Diggersby, so we should be in a pretty decent spot to win this game. We go for the full-on Scorching Sands. I don't want to risk that he no-shields a Fire Punch here. I feel like that would be my one lose condition. We've already baited him once here with a Fire Punch into the Drapion. I don't want to risk it a second time. Ashtonash throws the move here instantly. He doesn't want to take any more fast food pressure that he has to. This move will knock us out, but at this point, all I need to win this game is going to be an Acrobatics from our Jumpluff and that superpower that we have loaded on our Malamar. In comes Shadow Jumpluff here. We're going to be able to easily survive one crunch. We know that the one way that I can really lose this matchup as the Shadow Jumpluff is by going for a shield on the first crunch. Crunch always has the chance to lower my defense stat, so I want to take the one that I know for a fact will do the least amount of damage. In comes the crunch. Down goes a decent amount of our HP here, but we are able to survive. No debuff comes through against us. I go for the guaranteed acrobatics. Ashtonash has to think, am I going for the nuke? Am I going for the bait? Once again, I go for the nuke. He goes for the shield, which means he can protect his Drapion here, but it's going to be tripped down into a range now where Malamar should be able to knock him out with a superpower. In fact, we get to the next acrobatics on CMP against this Shadow Drapion. There is no reason now not to just shield this up, go for the acrobatics into the Shadow Drapion, and knock him out with this Pokemon. Acrobatics has been reached, which means in this very tricky set against Ashtonash, we will be able to win game number 3 and just barely keep on going in the winner's side of the bracket. The triple run back was the key to success. I didn't adapt there for game number 3. Ashtonash thought I would, but my Diggersby core broke the Drapion and Corviknight core that I thought was going to be coming in every single one of these games. Diggersby put in a lot of work, as well as my Malamar. Shadow Jumpluff was able to close out that endgame as well, and because of this win, we have made it on into the winners finals. This means it's going to be a best of 5 against my next opponent, whoever that might be, and the winner of the winners finals makes it into the grand finals. I'm secured a top 3 finish no matter what at this point, but I want to keep on winning. I want to win this title. Let's see who my next opponent is going to be. My next opponent will be decided as the winner of Pranav versus STUDMUFFINS. Now, both of these trainers have never won a tournament before, but they both made it incredibly far, just like Ashtonash. I know they're hungry for the win here, but I think I would rather fight Pranav. His team is a little bit more neutral into mind. He doesn't have that Cradily plus Claydol core that I was worried about against Ashtonash, so if I can choose one of my opponents, I would rather fight Pranav. Well, dang it. Okay, so while I'd rather not fight STUDMUFFINS here, I do think we still have some play despite the Claydol plus Cradily core. My Tinkaton looks pretty safe into his team through and through, as long as it does avoid that Claydol. My Shadow Jumpluff as well does look pretty safe across the whole team, as long as it avoids the Tinkaton, saying the Lapras is running Skull Bash. My own Lapras here should have quite a bit of play too, saying I'm running Ice Beam, which hits both that Claydol and that Cradily for super effective damage. I think those 3 Pokemon, Lapras, Tinkaton, and Shadow Jumpluff, will be my key to success against STUDMUFFINS. Let's see what happens in the first match. Game number 1 against STUDMUFFINS, and we have one of the best leads that I could possibly see. Tinkaton into Shadow Drapion is exactly where I want to be here. Tinkaton able to resist all the fast pressure this Pokemon's going to throw, and it forces the Drapion to go for Aqua Tail as well. With that said, he is staying in this matchup, which makes me think there is almost certainly going to be that Cradily in the backline. If that is the case, it could be slightly tricky for our Jumpluff and our Lapras to deal with, but we have a lot of neutral play into it across the board with our team. I'm going to go for the Play Rough. While Bulldoze would be super effective into the Poison-type Pokemon, I know Bulldoze is not a great move, and Play Rough, being a stab attack here from Tinkaton, actually does quite a bit more damage into the Shadow Drapion. If I land this attack here, it's going to do a lot of damage, maybe even put him into Fairy Wind downrange or Psywave downrange for Lapras later on. Play Rough comes through, it's able to put him deep into the red, and at this point, he ends up swapping out into his Claydol. I have my Shadow Jumpluff to come in here. He does have Ice Beam as well as Rock Tomb, which are super effective into my Jumpluff. The main reason why, while I do resist the faster pressure, this Pokemon is still tricky for my team to deal with. Rock Tomb comes through. We call that it's not going to be an Ice Beam here, but either way, Ice Beam would not one-shot. Rock Tomb likely going to be the right play on our opponent's end because he knows at this point that he wants to get that debuff against my attack stat. In comes an Aerial Ace or even an Acrobatics into this Claydol. This move should be able to put him down to about half of his remaining HP, and while I am pretty low on my Jumpluff, I think at this point we will just barely be able to survive the next Rock Tomb. Rock Tomb is going to be instantly thrown here from STUDMUFFINS. This move will end up landing, but based on the damage that first one did, I should be able to survive this, go for the Acrobatics still, and nearly knock him out. I think this Acrobatics is not going to be quite enough to KO this Claydol at -2 attack, but it still should put him into a farm down range for either my Tinkaton or my Lapras later on in this match. Acrobatics ends up landing against him. I go for my Lapras here. He swaps out at the exact same time into his Cradilly, and this is where I'm so happy that I have Ice Beam on my Lapras. Rock Tomb will come through. This move is super effective into us, but the best thing about Lapras is it is a very bulky Pokemon. I know for a fact I can survive one move here. We're not going to be in risk of getting farmed down, at least not just yet. We can also potentially go for the Sparkling Aria bait. While we do have Ice Beam here, it's also going to be a move that he knows I have. He needs to shield something in this game, and he does end up shielding the bait here from the Water-type move. In comes the move. We do get that shield here. He is going to be able to outpace us here to the next attack, which will lower my attack stat one more stage, but we still have Ice Beam, which is super effective, and even at -2, it will do a sizable amount of damage into this Cradilly. Rock Tomb ends up getting our first shield here of the match. Ice Beam going to be thrown here in just a second. Our opponent is thinking about what he wants to do. Ice Beam being thrown, this move will end up landing. No shield against this Cradilly this time. It is at -2. They will survive, but it will put them pretty low here into the red. And I think if he doesn't throw a move here, I can actually reach a Sparkling Aria right before I'm going to get farmed down. This means I'm going to be able to draw the final shield from Cradilly, and I still have a lot of energy left over on my Tinkaton. This can be a bit of a tricky endgame, though I know at this point the Drapion still has some energy left over on it. It's able to swap back in, but I just barely outpaced the Bulldoze. I can knock them out before they're able to reach this move, and because Aqua Tail will not draw our shield here, this Bulldoze should be able to knock out this Drapion. We can knock out the Claydol with fast pressure, and then I should be able to go for a charge attack into that Cradilly to finish off this match with a full Tinkaton sweep. 1 HP across the board on my full team here. He does have 1 Rock Tomb loaded, but I know at this point that we can shield this move up, go for the Play Rough here, guarantee the knockout. Tinkaton will not get farmed down here before I get my next attack. In comes the Play Rough. Our opponent, no shields hiding behind this Cradilly. We're able to go for the Play Rough, and this should pick up the knockout, taking the win here in game number 1 with just a little bit of HP on all 3 of my Pokemon remaining. My Tinkaton in the lead completely unwound that team. It was kind of a close endgame there, he played very well, but because Tinkaton gave me such a big advantage into the Shadow Drapion Cradilly duo, we were able to come out on top. I would expect here in the next game that he will respect my Tinkaton just a little bit more. He disrespected it so hard. Shadow Drapion plus Cradilly both have almost no play into it, so maybe in this next game he's going to adjust to something else. I feel like bringing my Lapras in the lead for the next game is a very safe option. Claydol lead is very likely, in my opinion, from STUDMUFFINS at this point, but just in case he runs anything else, there's a lot of play my Lapras has across the board, so I think putting that in the lead, maybe bringing my Malamar in as well as a better answer to that Cradilly could be a good idea. Shadow Jumpluff as well is still a very solid pick, so let's use these Pokemon and see if we can take the win in game number 2. Game number 2 against STUDMUFFINS, Lapras up against a Shadow Drapion. So it looks like at this point, STUDMUFFINS has run back the same lead from game number 1. We don't know for sure just yet if it's going to be the same team that he used in game number 1 or just the same lead. Crunch will end up getting thrown right before my first Sparkling Aria will be reached, but we can survive one of these pretty comfortably with Lapras. Crunch comes through. Do we see a debuff? No debuff to be had here from that Crunch, and at this point, Sparkling Aria will be thrown, trying its very best to chip down this Shadow Drapion. Once this Pokemon's out of the way, I'm hoping Malamar as well as Shadow Jumpluff will have more play in the backline. It depends on if he did run back the same team, though. If it is going to be that Cradilly plus Claydol core that we did see in game number 1, this could be a little bit tricky. We're going to no-shield the Crunch here. I might be able to survive this move and get a final attack off with our Lapras. Crunch is going to land. Can we get the next move off? Our opponent will farm us all the way down, unfortunately right before the next Sparkling Aria will be thrown, but I'm going to try to farm down with our Malamar. If we can farm all the way down before a charge attack will be reached, then we're going to be in a fantastic spot, but our opponent at the very last second reaches the Crunch, drawing our first shield. Crunch here will end up drawing our shield, but we have energy on our Malamar, which if it is once again Claydol as well as Cradily in the backline, we have both Foul Play and Superpower to throw into them. Our opponent thinking for just a second which Pokemon to bring in. We're going to see here that STUDMUFFINS chooses that Claydol, and I think almost certainly that is going to mean he did run back the same team. It is almost definitely going to be that Cradily in the back. Foul Play coming through this move is going to get a shield here. He knows he can go for Rock Tomb to debuff me. While I do have super effective fast move or charging pressure into him, my fast moves do almost nothing into this Pokemon, so this matchup gets trickier the longer it goes on. Foul Play number 2 going to be thrown. He is going to have to let this move go. He doesn't want to go down 2 shields just yet, but Foul Play is not enough to even 2-shot this Pokemon, at least after he gets that debuff. I'm going to catch the move on our Jumpluff, knowing at least at this point we can save our Malamar for that Cradily. Rock Tomb, though, will debuff our attack stat, as well as potentially put us down into range where another Rock Tomb from the Cradily could knock us out. There it is, as if we didn't know already. It is that Cradily on his team in the backline. Acrobatics going to be thrown, but our attack is at -1. Bullet Seed Fast Move Pressure isn't doing too much to our Jumpluff, but I am debuffed. He can no-shield this move very comfortably, go for 2 Rock Tombs before I can reach 2 Acrobatics, and he should be able to win this game, I would assume, just with a lot of Rock Tomb spam. Rock Tomb number 1 from this Cradily going to be thrown. At this point, he has back-to-back attacks. Even if I shield this move up here, he's going to be able to go for the second one, so I am forced to no-shield his attack, but now he can lock me in with another Rock Tomb debuff with this Malamar. Rock Tomb going to be thrown. I do survive this move, but I also know at this point, no matter what happens, I'm just going to get mud slapped down here by this Claydol. Rock Tomb is able to land. In comes a couple more Bullet Seeds. If he can swap into that Claydol, he'll be able to farm us down here. He is going for the Bullet Seed down instead, it looks like. Down goes our Malamar, unfortunately not able to pick up the win in game number 2. Wow, I did not see that coming. He ran back the same team that he lost with in game number 1. That means at this point he is not scared of my Tinkaton. Maybe in the next game he's going to respect it just a little bit more, because my first game that I played against him, it was such a strong pick into his whole team. With that said, I don't know what he wants to do here. There's a chance he runs it back a third time. There's a chance that he doesn't. It's really hard to call what he wants to do. I think just running 3 solid Pokemon and trying to play a neutral matchup here is going to be my best chance at winning this next game. Let's see what he's going to run. Let's see what we adjust into. Game number 3, and once again, a Shadow Drapion in the lead. You can't make this stuff up at this point. If he ran it back for a third time in a row, then that's going to be a little bit of a tricky matchup here. With that said, Malamar is not the worst scenario into this matchup. It might be weird to say that our Psychic type has play into the Dark type, but because Psywave is still able to do quite a bit of fast pressure here, I'm going to go for the bait of the Foul Play to not lower my stats. We get a shield here early on from this Shadow Drapion. We can survive an attack here as well, and I don't know exactly how he wants to play this out. I know, though, at this point, though, he might expect a superpower here instantly when I can throw it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to swap into our Lapras. He simul-swaps, trying to catch our superpower on this Claydol, but because I swapped at the exact same time that he did, I still have energy on my Malamar. I have my Lapras locked into this Claydol as well, which is a fairly positive matchup here for my Water-type Pokemon. With that said, we do have to keep in mind, this Pokemon does resist my Fast Move Pressure. We do not one-shot with a Charge Attack either, and Rock Tomb is super effective and will debuff my Lapras as well. This means while this matchup is not bad for us per se, it can get a little bit tricky the longer it goes on. Rock Tomb doesn't one-shot us here, but at this point, maybe I'm going to be in farm down range. I don't love this fact that the Mudslaps are doing so much to us right now, but I'm going to go for the Sparkling Aria here after a couple more Psywaves, build up as much energy as I can. Does he want to use a second shield on his Claydol? I would be surprised to see it this early on in the game. He lets it go down, and at this point, we do have switch advantage as well as a shield advantage in this game. But STUDMUFFINS does have a lot of energy on the Shadow Drapion. I am able to reach a Sparkling Aria before getting farmed down, which is helpful chip damage, but my attack has been lowered. He should be able to pretty easily survive this move, and while he is low on HP, I still need to throw a Charge Attack to knock him out. We go for the Foul Play here into the Shadow Drapion, drawing his second shield, which means we have a 2 shield to 0 advantage with our Shadow Jumpluff. There is very little on his team that could deal with that Pokemon. I think the worst case scenario might be his own Tinkaton. If he does have that pick in the back line, he can resist my damage, but I still have 2 shields. I don't think that Tinkaton could even deal with a Shadow Jumpluff with a 1 shield deficit, let alone a 2 shield deficit. I can come in, try to farm him down here with our Shadow Jumpluff, which should give us a big energy lead, and if it is the same team that we've been seeing here, then almost certainly it's just going to be that Cradily in the back line. I can easily deal with Cradily if that's the Pokemon that it is. Once again, no shield the first Crunch. I know that we are going to potentially get debuffed here. Crunch is going to come through. No debuff this time, but we can shield up the next one if we need to. Go for a full farm down against Stud. He goes for the Aqua Tail as well, not even going to give himself a chance to go for the debuff. And at this point, we can farm this Pokemon all the way down. We have so much energy on Shadow Jumpluff. As long as it's not Tinkaton, we should win. And it's not Tinkaton. It is the same exact team that we've been seeing. Acrobatics should be enough here to 2-shot. We are not debuffed for once in our life, so we can go for this move undebuffed into the no-shield Cradily, put them down deep into the yellow. The next move, even after debuff, will easily be enough to knock him out. Rock Tomb coming through. I know we have a shield remaining for this very reason. Shield up the Rock Tomb, go for the next acrobatics, knock out this Cradilly, and Shadow Jumpluff in the endgame, unwinding STUDMUFFINS' team. Acrobatics going to be thrown here in just a second. This will be enough damage to knock him out. And while that Shadow Drapion is still alive, they have almost no energy, almost no HP. Down goes Cradilly, and almost certainly after the fact, down will go that Shadow Drapion. You've got to be kidding me. He ran it back 3 times in a row. Who does that? Well, saying that I've used that strategy before, I know at this point that there's a chance he runs it back a 4th time, but in a best of 5, if you are on death's door, he is 1 loss away from losing this set. He might have to actually adjust for this next game. There's a lot of different plays that I could make here. There's a lot of different Pokemon that I could rely on. I feel like maybe bringing my Tinkaton back into the fray could be a good idea. It's a Pokemon he's been disrespecting, and in general, it is pretty safe into his team. I have the ability to take some risks here. He is 1 loss away from losing this set. Let's see if I can finish out this series 3-1. Game number 4 against STUDMUFFINS, and we see Claydol up against our Lapras. This is a very neutral matchup here. I do have a water type into a ground type, but we have to keep in mind he has a rock type attack that always debuffs my attack stat, and my psychic type fast move pressure is doing almost nothing against the psychic type Pokemon. In comes our first Sparkling Aria, but we see an instant shield from STUDMUFFINS, realizing that this will do the most amount of damage before a debuff will end up coming through. Rock Tomb instantly thrown by STUDMUFFINS. He wants to start debuffing me as quickly as possible, and at this point, I'm fine staying in this matchup. I'm fine neutralizing this Claydol and making it so our Tinkaton in the backline should have just a little bit more play. While he has swapped up his lead matchup here, I'm not sure if he's also swapped up his backline. There's a chance there's still a Drapion and a Cradilly in the back. If that is the case, then investing in my Tinkaton is going to be the way to win this game. In comes Sparkling Aria number 2. This move will put him deep into the yellow, but thanks to that debuff, it's not quite enough to one-shot him here, and he might be able to slap us down right before that next Sparkling Aria is going to be reached, which is a very uncomfortable spot to be in. Claydol's energy will be absorbed here by our Shadow Jumpluff. I could technically bring in our Tinkaton if I wanted to resist all the damage, but I feel like at this point committing to a Tinkaton sweep in the backline will be the play, just kind of sacrificing our Shadow Jumpluff here, taking the Rock Tombs, and trying to whittle this Pokemon down as much as we can will be the right way to play out this game. Rock Tomb number 2 will be reached. I know this is not an Ice Beam. I can survive this attack, but I will be put down deep into the red at this point. I am hoping that our Tinkaton in the backline will be able to put in enough work to win this game. Mud Slap doesn't do any fast move pressure to our flying and grass type Pokemon, so I'm going to make sure to overfarm as much as I can here. While my Jumpluff is low, I might still be able to reach either an Aerial Ace or an Acrobatics into the backline. We go for the Aerial Ace. It's not quite enough to knock out, but one more Fairy Wind will take out the Claydol, which means at this point we do have an Acrobatics loaded. In comes their own Tinkaton, which is probably the worst case scenario to see, saying that at this point I'm down 1 Fairy Wind, and while I do have a shield advantage, they're going to be able to spam out Bulldozes, doing quite a bit of damage to our own Tinkaton. Bulldoze number 1 coming through from STUDMUFFINS. This move will end up doing about a third of my HP, and it gets a debuff into my defense stat as well, which means that every move they're going to throw from here on out is going to do quite a bit more damage into us. Bulldoze is going to be thrown from our side too, but at this point, this is not going to be able to one-shot him. We saw how much damage it did to us and how much damage it did to them. Luckily, we get a debuff in our side as well, which is a little bit helpful, but we're in such a tricky spot here no matter what. Bulldoze number 2 going to come through. I have to shield this up. We need to keep some HP on our Tinkaton one way or another. Bulldoze will end up being thrown here in just a second, right before his next attack here into his Tinkaton. This move will come through. Will we see a shield? No, an instant no shield from this Tinkaton. I'm not sure what he has in the backline. I'm just hoping that our Tinkaton has play into whatever it might be. Even after the debuff here, that move was not quite enough to knock him out, and this is not even Fairy Wind downrange, so this is going to be as tricky of an endgame as it can be. Bulldoze comes through against us. Once again, we shield. We avoid the debuff this time, which means we still have a decent amount of defense remaining. Bulldoze going to be thrown, but a catch from this Cradilly, potentially making this endgame a lot more tricky. Bulldoze going to come through, and it's going to get an instant no-shield. He knows he made the catch. It's not a Play Rough, but the move can debuff. We get the debuff once again here, which means at this point, Play Rough is going to do a sizable amount of damage into this Pokemon. Play Rough coming through. Are we going to see a shield, or will he let this go? Play Rough is going to do a sizable amount of damage. If he does end up going for the no-shield, he lets the move get shielded here from this Cradilly, and because of this next Rock Tomb not being quite enough to knock out, I think I see a way to win this game. All I need to do is bank a Bulldoze here on my Tinkaton, and then come in with our Shadow Jumpluff, land the Acrobatics that we have loaded. We'll still have a Bulldoze here in this matchup. We can use the energy still on our Jumpluff to go for an Acrobatics here, maybe even reach an Aerial Ace into that Tinkaton later on in this game. This might somehow be a winnable game. Acrobatics comes through, it one-shots the Cradilly. At this point, he's forced to throw energy against our Tinkaton. We have the Bulldoze loaded in the backline. All we need to do now is click the charge attack, and we should be able to win this series 3-1. Bulldoze knocks out our Jumpluff, but we have the Bulldoze remaining on our Tinkaton. We were able to throw it into the opposing Tinkaton, and this will knock them out and take us the win here, winning us the winners finals and taking us on into the grand finals of this tournament. In a photo finish in that Game 4, we were able to just barely come out on top and win our way into the grand finals. Now, because we are still in the winner's side of this tournament, that means whoever we fight in the loser's finals has to beat us twice to win the tournament. I would only have to beat them once. This puts us in the best possible position to winning the Portland Regional Championships and becoming the first player in Play Pokemon history for Pokemon Go to win the same tournament 2 different times. I don't know who I'm going to fight yet. There's a lot of great battlers still fighting it out on the loser's side. I'm going to have to wait my next opponent and see who they're going to be. Let's take a look at the loser's bracket and find out which trainer emerges victorious. ChemCoop, a trainer who started in the top cut bracket from the loser's side, has swept through the entire thing. He beat Adib Khan, Pranav, as well as Ashtonash and STUDMUFFINS, the other 2 trainers that I fought here in this tournament. That means that he is a fantastic battler. He was able to fight his way all the way through the loser's side and emerge into the grand finals. Once again, he has to beat me in 2 best-of-5 series because he is coming from the loser's side if he wants to win this tournament. I only have to beat him in a single best-of-5 series. Let's see what his team is, and let's get into the final opponent of the tournament. Taking a look at ChemCoop's team, and we see a lot of very familiar Pokemon. We've seen a lot of Azumarill and Shadow Drapion, as well as Lapras throughout this tournament. He has Claydol, which is a bit tricky, but it's not paired with that Cradily for once in this event. Malamar as well, a very neutral Pokemon, and then his wildcard pick of Talonflame. This is the first Fire-type Pokemon that we fought against, and while it does have play into Shadow Jumpluff as well as Tinkaton, I feel like with how hard of an answer Blastoise is into it, with how safe Blastoise is into his entire team, he'd have to be a little bit crazy to use it. I would expect a lot of Azumarill and Shadow Drapion, as I have seen from him in this whole tournament, as well as Claydol. I think that using my Tinkaton and Blastoise in the first game could be a great duo to use. Let's get into the first game and see who comes out on top. Game number 1 against ChemCoop, and we are met by one of the worst lead matchups that we could possibly see. I'm going to say swap my Water-type Pokemon Blastoise here. Rollout doesn't do a lot of damage to him, but I can outpace to a Hydro Cannon. Unfortunately, it ends up getting caught by the Azumarill. That is a lot of energy down the drain, and a lot of energy to give over to that Claydol. Hydro Cannon comes through. This move does nothing into one of the bulkiest Water-type Pokemon in the meta. Our rollouts as well as our Skull Bash will be neutral into him, but because he made such a nice catch here, that Claydol is going to be very tricky to deal with in the backline. I'm able to win CMP, go for the Skull Bash, and raise my defense stat while also doing a decent amount of damage to this Azumarill, but at this point, we are in such a bad position, I'm not quite sure how we can come back from this. Skull Bash will end up landing, no shield from ChemCoop there. Honestly, I probably would have preferred a shield on his part here. I need to get shields down at some point in this game to knock out that Claydol. Flareoff does end up landing, and I think at this point our Switch Clock is coming back up. There's a chance here we can go for a catch of our own on our Tinkaton against this Flareoff. If I can keep this energy here on our Blastoise, maybe there's at least a sliver of a chance to win this game. But even with that said, I know what's going to happen here. I catch the move, good for me, but that Claydol is going to come back in and go for a huge farm down, getting a massive amount of energy against our backline. Rock Tomb likely also going to be thrown to make it so I do even less damage and guarantee I only reach 1 charge attack against him. Rock Tomb, of course, being thrown here. Tinkaton does resist the move, but it will do a decent amount of chip damage. And at this point, we're in Mud Slap downrange. We'll only reach 1 Play Rough. Our Tinkaton is in such a tricky position, and our backline is not positioned much better against a Claydol with so much HP and so much energy remaining. Our Blastoise does have a decent amount of energy on it as well, but I don't think we can survive long enough to get to 3 more Hydro Cannons in this game. I think at most we can get to 2, but unfortunately he does have 2 shields remaining, which means there is no chance that we can knock out this Pokemon, at least not before he's going to be able to farm us all the way down. In comes our first Hydro Cannon, an instant shield by ChemCoop. He knows at this point, farm us down, go for debuffs against our final Pokemon. That's going to be the way to win this game. In fact, he goes instantly here for a Rock Tomb to get our first shield here in this match. And this Rock Tomb will be able to do just that. Rock Tomb going to draw a shield. Our Hydro Cannon is going to be reached here in just a second. But yeah, there's no chance we can reach another Hydro Cannon against them, which means Malamar will be stuck with a permanent debuff in the backline. In comes the Hydro Cannon, down goes the final shield from ChemCoop's side, and in comes our Malamar, which is going to take a Rock Tomb. I don't like to see this here, but I'm just hoping whatever the final Pokemon is, our Malamar might be able to take down. Rock Tomb being thrown against us, this move will both debuff our attack stat as well as put us down deep into the green. I'm almost in the yellow, almost at half HP, and Shadow Drapion revealed as the final Pokemon. I guess at the very least I do get to see the full team from ChemCoop here in game number 1, but this is not a very winnable Pokemon to see. Aqua Tail being thrown, it will put us down deep into the red. We're in farm down range at this point, and Superpower, while it might be able to two-shot the Shadow Drapion from this range, it's still not going to be a great spot for us to be in. In comes the first attack. This move will come close to putting them into the range for the next one. Will knock them out here, but my attack has been debuffed now by 2 stages, one by that Rock Tomb, one by our own Superpower. The second attack does come through, and this should not be enough here to knock him out, I don't think. I might be able to roll out this down with Blastoise just to get at least 1 KO here in this game, but unfortunately for us, they're already at a charge attack. This Aqua Tail will draw our final shield. If I can somehow reach a move against that Claydol, I could knock him out, but that Azumarill is still alive in the back line. I have way too little HP remaining. In comes a Mud Slapper, and I think at this point, game number 1 goes to ChemCoop. Alright, well, that might have gone as terribly as it possibly could have. He used Claydol in the lead to RPS my Tinkaton to oblivion. I didn't have a lot of play there, and my Blastoise, while it was good on the safe swap, he made an incredible catch on his Azumarill, and in general just danced around me so hard in that first match. I feel like if I want to use a Pokemon that's going to be a little bit more neutral into his team, potentially something like my Diggersby could be a little bit better off at dealing with the Shadow Drapion, while not hard losing to a Pokemon like that Claydol. While I did lose the first game of this best of 5, I know I have a lot of wiggle room left, and if somehow I do lose this best of 5, I still have an entire next best of 5 that I can fall back on. With that said, I'd rather finish off this tournament in this best of 5 series. Using my Diggersby and my Blastoise in this next game hopefully will lead me to a bit more success. Let's see how it goes. Game number 2, and we see a much more playable lead matchup. Diggersby up against the Shadow Drapion, a Pokemon we do have a lot of play with here with our Diggersby, but also our backline can deal with this if we need to. Coop is staying in the lead for just a second, which makes me wonder what he might have in the back. Aqua Tail obviously is super effective into us here, but we know we can survive 2, and if he does go for a 3rd here, then honestly at this point I'm still fine one way or another. We're going to go for the Scorching Sands. He makes a catch on Claydol, but luckily at this point, he's serving up one of the trickiest Pokemon for my team to see on a silver platter. In comes the Scorching Sands that will put them down into range, where an Acrobatics from our Shadow Jumpluff will come very close to knocking him out. I can outpace him here as well, because at this point, Shadow Jumpluff is one of the spammiest Pokemon in the game. He has absolutely no energy coming into this matchup, so we do just barely reach this Acrobatics before he can reach a move against us. In comes the attack, likely a no-shield coming through. He might be able to survive the move. He does survive the attack here, and this time we're going to see an Ice Beam thrown into our Jumpluff. But I'm fine with this at this point. I know if the Ice Beam is thrown, that I'm not going to be debuffed. I can guarantee that I survive and that I farm down, either coming out of this matchup with 2 charge attacks, or at the very least an Acrobatics I can throw into almost anything in the game. In comes the full farm down here. Coop not quite able to reach another Rock Tomb. Jumpluff should be able to go for an Acrobatics against him, no matter what comes in. We see a Talonflame come in here, which, while this is not great for our Jumpluff, Acrobatics is an insane attack. It will do a massive amount of damage. He ends up shielding as well, and we have our Blastoise, which can switch lock itself here into the Talonflame, roll out doing an insane amount of fast move pressure. Hydro Cannon almost certainly at this point would one-shot. He goes for the charge attack against us here. Blastoise looks so strong into his remaining team. I might as well shield this up just in case he does try to do anything too fancy against us here. He goes for the Shadow Drapion swap in too, and I don't mind in the slightest. Hydro Cannon is still a very strong attack. He's been tripped down quite a bit as well. We're able to go for the move, put him deep into the red, and now Diggersby should be able to come in here and neutralize most of this Shadow Drapion. In comes the Aqua Tail. We know this will not knock us out. He will be forced to throw all of his energy if he does want to KO us here, and once his Shadow Drapion is out of the way, Talonflame has no chance to knock out our Blastoise. I'm perfectly fine letting this go, getting 1 extra rollout on our Blastoise, and just start spamming out those Hydro Cannons against the Talonflame. Aqua Tail comes through, down goes our Diggersby, but 1 rollout is all it takes here to knock out the Shadow Drapion, and Talonflame, when it comes back in, is going to be met by a loaded Blastoise. They have almost nowhere to go. In comes our Hydro Cannon, and at this point, even without Brave Bird here, our opponent has no chance to win this game. They're on Flame Charge, so they have no nuke potential on this Pokemon. In comes the first Hydro Cannon. This move will end up drawing that shield here. The second move will end up finishing off this Talonflame. I'm surprised to see Talon at all against us, but I am so happy to see it here. Blastoise able to finish off this game and take the win in game number 2. There we go, that game went much better. We were able to use our Diggersby as well as our Blastoise against that Talonflame to completely unwind his team. I feel like lining up that Talonflame against our Blastoise is almost certainly going to disincentivize it for the rest of this set, and just being able to deal with that Claydol with our Shadow Jumpluff as well in that mid-game matchup was a breath of fresh air. I think going into this next game, we know what's working at this point. Maybe even bringing out a Pokemon like my Lapras, which also looks pretty strong into his team and is pretty good into that Claydol as well, could be a good adjustment. Let's get into the next game and see who takes the lead in this series. Game number 3, and we see an Azumarill into our Shadow Jumpluff. Now, this lead matchup here is a very neutral one. We saw earlier on against Ashtonash just how much damage an Ice Beam can do into a Shadow Jumpluff, so while this matchup is good, it's not necessarily as good as I would like it to be. With that said, we do have two Water-type Pokemon in the backline. I feel like one good play I could make here is try to go for a catch on an Ice Beam at some point. Acrobatics comes through, does about half of the Azumarill's HP. We go for the catch on our Blastoise, but our opponent is a very smart player. They see it coming a mile away. They throw the Play Rough rather than the Ice Beam. Although this is still a catch in my favor, I'm able to drain a lot of energy here from this Azumarill and also build up energy on my Blastoise. We bait out the Malamar, which is also very good for us to see because our Lapras in the backline wants nothing to do with this Pokemon. In comes our first Hydro Cannon. This move is not going to one-shot them, but they will be forced to throw energy here before my second one will be reached, or else potentially I can get a shield here from this Pokemon. In comes the first Hydro Cannon, they do let it go. In comes the second Hydro Cannon, and they actually don't throw energy. They are not confident that they can knock out my Blastoise before I'm able to reach this move. Hydro Cannon will draw that first shield here from ChemCoop, and while they do have a lot of energy left over on this Malamar, I do have my Jumpluff that can come back in, go for super effective Fairy Wind damage, as well as potentially reaching Aerial Ace to knock them out. They go for a huge undercharge here with this Foul Play, likely a good play here from ChemCoop, but I can actually go and save my Blastoise, come in with our Shadow Jumpluff, and start building up even more energy. I don't know what he might have in the backline, but at this point, Shadow Jumpluff up energy is generally pretty strong, and after that last game, I would be so surprised to see a Talonflame. No, in the backline, it's going to be the Shadow Drapion. I'm going to full send the Acrobatics here, trying to either get the snipe through the shield or guarantee the final shield here from our opponent. In comes the shield from ChemCoop, so I guess I should have gone for the bait, but either way, we have 2 shields to 0, and I think at this point our Lapras is in a very good spot to close out this game. Not only that, but we can reach an Aerial Ace here, which does a decent amount of chip damage into this Shadow Drapion. This move is going to come through and potentially put them into farm down range. With that said, our Lapras doesn't have that much faster pressure into this Pokemon. ChemCoop is at 100 energy. He is forced to throw an Aqua Tail here before my next Aerial Ace, and this will end up knocking us out. With that said, Lapras up 2 shield should be in a pretty good spot, but Drapion has energy, Azumarill is still kind of healthy, and Malamar is still alive in the back. Lapras has a lot of work to do, but I have 2 shields. I have a Blastoise as a catch available to us as well if we need it. We no-shield that first crunch just in case a debuff does come through. We know at this point it's a 30% chance that can happen, and this is exactly why we no-shield. That crunch debuff did end up happening here, which means now I will take a bit more faster pressure from everything across the board, but because we did no-shield that first attack, at least that first crunch didn't put us into the yellow. Crunch comes through once again. We do shield the attack up here, and at this point, he is very close to another move. He banks an Aqua Tail and swaps out into his Azumarill. This is where having Skull Bash could be a little bit more helpful here for our Lapras. Our Sparkling Aria and our Ice Beam damage is going to be resisted by this Azumarill, but the amount of Psywave damage that I can get into him is going to add up quite a bit over time. I think I see the win condition for us here in this game. It's going to be to farm down this Azumarill, have a Sparkling Aria for both that Drapion as well as that Malamar in the backline. I think that's going to be the most easy way that we can win this game. Player F comes through, we're able to shield the attack up, but at this point, I don't know if I can quite farm down in time here. We're way past 100 energy, but I can't throw a charge attack at this point. We're going to go for the catch on our Blastoise, and because of this catch at this point, I think we're going to be able to farm this down, go for 2 Sparkling Arias, and win this game. Ice Beam comes through here. We're able to go back into our Lapras, and we have so much energy. He does have an Aqua Tail on that Shadow Drapion, but unless he gets to a crunch, there's no chance that he can knock us out here. In comes his first Pokemon. Who is he going to bring in? He is thinking here down to the last second. He brings in his Malamar, but he instantly swaps out to his Shadow Drapion, hoping at this point that he's able to keep his Malamar and potentially get to another move. He did have that Aqua Tail loaded. It would not be quite enough damage, though, to knock us out. Sparkling knocks out the Shadow Drapion. Ice Beam will knock out the Malamar, and we are able to take the win in game number 3, making it so the first time in this series against ChemCoop, we have the advantage. And with the win in game number 3, we have now come back 0-1 to 2-1. I have one more win to go if I want to win this event, and at this point, I think I have the key to success against ChemCoop's team. My Shadow Jumpluff, my Lapras, and my Blastoise, all very strong picks into his lineup. I was able to dance around him in the last game. I feel like if I keep using these Pokemon, I can keep this up. Blastoise is a Pokemon I've kept in the back this entire tournament. I feel like it's about time to put it front and center, to lead it into ChemCoop, and to try to win game number 4. Let's see who comes out on top in what could be the last game of the tournament. Game number 4 against ChemCoop, and we see Blastoise up against Malamar. Now, while this is not an inherently good matchup here for Blastoise, I know that avoiding this matchup with our Lapras is a very good thing. Hydro Cannon will be able to do quite a bit of damage here. We can likely go for 2 Hydro Cannons in the Zero Shield matchup, Foul Play coming through from ChemCoop right before my Hydro Cannon will be thrown. Foul Play going to do quite a bit of damage to us here, but Blastoise is pretty bulky. We're able to survive 2 from this range, go for that Hydro Cannon here, and once this Malamar is either chipped down or once we get that shield advantage in our favor, we should be in such a good spot. Hydro Cannon comes through, it's able to land into the Malamar. At this point, we are just one rollout away from the next attack here. Our opponent goes for the catch on the Azumarill, and while this is a good catch, I am not that worried. I can overfarm here, I can get to a lot of energy against them, and then come in with our Lapras. This way, I can have a lot of Hydro Cannons loaded for the backline, and I can use them to my discretion once this Azumarill is out of the way. Azumarill is the only Pokemon on his team that would even consider wanting to take Hydro Cannons from my Blastoise, so having that much energy as well as neutralizing this bulky Water-type Pokemon with our Lapras should be one of the best spots that it can be in. Play Rough is thrown into our Lapras here. We can survive 2 of these attacks here pretty easily, so at this point Lapras is in a very comfortable spot just to start building up energy here and neutralizing most of this Azumarill. Play Rough number 2 going to be thrown. At this point, I'm not even in range where I would get farmed down here by Bubbles. I want to build up as much energy as I can, make sure I always have a Sparkling Aria loaded just in case Malamar does end up coming back in. Our opponent building up even more energy, but I'm able to go for a Sparkling Aria before they reach another move. This won't do too much damage to them, but at this point, I don't really mind. Azumarill is so low at this point, it's not going to get much done in this game, and we're able to build up even more energy. Our opponent is staying in even more against our Pokemon, and Sparkling Aria, while once again it will not knock out, will put them down deep into the red. In comes a move our opponent once again, no shields the attack, and we are very close to the next Sparkling Aria. He swaps out, but we're able to reach the Sparkling once again against the Malamar, which either draws a shield or knocks out the Psychic and Dark-type Pokemon. We're going to see a shield here from the last second from ChemCoop, but now our switch clock is up ourselves. We can come in with our Jump Bluff and go for a nasty farm down against this Pokemon. We know at this point that Acrobatics is a very powerful move. There's nothing in the game that wants to take this damage, and just in case it is a Pokemon like that Talonflame in the backline, we have so much energy on our Blastoise, there is almost nothing that he can do. Fairy Wind will be enough here to farm him down, but not before he's able to reach another Foul Play against us. I can shield up this move, go for the complete farm down into Malamar, and have a massive amount of energy against no matter what he has in the back. ChemCoop goes down with his Malamar. Who does he bring in at this point? Azumarill does have some energy on it, as well as it's in range where I can't really farm them down super easily with our Jump Bluff, so depending on what he brings in, I will likely throw a Charge Attack. In comes his Shadow Drapion. We see his final Pokemon here. We instantly throw the Acrobatics. We know at this point, with all the energy that we have left over on our Blastoise, there is almost nothing that he can do. Acrobatics does get shielded here, but by getting that shield, now 2 Hydro Cannons will be enough to win us this game. All I need to do is go for the Acrobatics. He goes for the catch here. A nice play, but a little bit too little too late, saying Blastoise can go for double Hydro Cannon into that Shadow Drapion and take the win here in this match. Acrobatics knocks out this Azumarill. Hydro Cannon number 1 going to be thrown. Hydro Cannon number 2 going to follow very shortly after. Blastoise has been the key to our success throughout this whole tournament, and we are going to see it finish off this event for us. The second Hydro Cannon going to come through, knocking out the Shadow Drapion and winning us the Portland Regional Championships. After starting out 0-1 against ChemCoop, we get the 3-0 sweep in the next 3 games, and we are able to become the 2-time Portland Regional Champion. This is the first time in Play Pokemon history for Pokemon Go that anyone has ever won the same regional twice. Now, if I can be real here for a moment, I just want to say how much it means to me to be able to win this event. ChemCoop, first and foremost, is a very good friend of mine, and being able to share the stage with him at the end of the event was one of the best experiences that I've ever had at a tournament. Along with that, I haven't had the best of runs the last couple of seasons. I've been trying my best to replicate my success after winning the World Championships in 2023, but I've always come up just short. My goal after winning Worlds was always to just try to win another event at some point. It's taken a while, but I finally reached that goal, and I think now, with NAIC, the North American International Championships, coming up here in just under a month, I have the chance to win that event as well and reclaim my title there. I won the North American International Championships in 2022. I just reclaimed my Portland title. Will I be able to do that in the next tournament? All I can say is you definitely want to stay tuned for my next tournament recap. If you've watched this far into the video, I really want to just say thank you so much. This video took a long time to make, and I think at this point, it's my favorite video that I've ever made. I'm going to be making a lot more tournament recap videos in the future, given that I have good performances at the events, and if this video does well, then it's only going to incentivize me to do even better. But once again, thank you so much for watching, take care, and stay tuned for my North American International Championship recap.